And at the end, anybody who's on Zoom, I'm here for you for questions, okay? So we're going live on Facebook. It's rather exciting. So I love doing these deep dives. For those of you who are new to me, I'm Elle Ingalls. I'm the creator of the pressure-free method. And every once in a while, I do a deep dive. What do I mean by that? I pick a few topics that I think are really important to people and just take a half hour, go a little bit deeper on what I think will be helpful to people to break some patterns, to help them step into their full potential, and of course, to reduce stress, anger, and anxiety. So tonight's topic is about the brain. It's about focus and memory. And the first thing that I want you to do, and I see people taking notes, which is fabulous. The first thing I want you to do tonight is to think for a moment about your brain's health and how your brain is, and what is something that you would like to improve or change or experience regarding your brain, regarding how your brain works. For example, if you feel like you have some focus issues, maybe you've been diagnosed ADD or ADHD, or maybe just in general, you kind of feel like you lose focus on tasks and things. So you'd like to have better focus. You want to be able to stay in longer on things. Maybe you feel like you might have some memory issues. So like you're forgetting things that you think you should be able to remember. Or maybe you've always been that way, but it seems like it's getting a little bit worse. And so memory is a thing for you. I was just coaching my group program and we were talking about complaining. So are there patterns of emotions that your brain goes through that are not particularly helpful for you? So if you pause for a moment and think about, yeah, I wake up in the morning and I'm not very cheerful because I'm already worried about all the things I need to do in my day. Or maybe there's worries because there's some health issues or relationship issues or money issues going on. So there's like this instant going into things that aren't so good, even at the start of your day. Or maybe you have a pattern of getting to the end of your day and you've got a list of things to do and you haven't even begun to get that list completed and you feel like, oh my goodness, like the day is coming to end. I'm too tired to do anything more and I haven't completed what I expected to. So you have a lot of expectations about what our brain is capable of doing in a day. And so maybe there's something there that you need to switch up. So again, what would you like to improve, change, experience regarding your brain? Are there things you have trouble with that you wish were better? Also, if you hear yourself say that I'm not very good at something, so I can't do that very well, something to do with your brain. Like people will say to me, well, I'm not very artistic, or I just don't do math very well. Like I can't just add in my head, or I'm not very visual. I've heard people say that too. Like I can't envision what I want for my future because I can't do that very well in my head. So if you say that you're not very good at something, that's an issue too. So once you've written down a few things, I want you to take a look at that list and just circle one. Just circle one thing that if that could improve over the next few weeks, it would really be helpful to you. So again, we're kind of getting a little focus on one thing that you would like to see change up. So that's actually the first step of pressure-free, and the pressure-free method is to identify a target. What do you want? We don't take a lot of time to think about that usually, and we certainly don't get as granular as we just did here. Like, what do you really want? So if you can take a moment to like really write down what could be helpful for you to switch up, what might be possible. And then the second step of the pressure-free method are triggers, noticing anything that might cause you to trigger the fight or flight stress response. And it tends to be emotions, and I've got them right on my board behind me here. It tends to be these emotions. Anytime you feel angry or annoyed, anxious or afraid, anytime you might feel ashamed, and whenever you start to argue. So what causes you to feel kind of argumentative? What's interesting about these emotions, so angry, annoyed, anxious, afraid, ashamed, argumentative, is that once we've triggered the stress response, we're very quick to justify and rationalize why we feel any of those. There's plenty of evidence and reasons why. Does that make sense? For example, if I start arguing with someone because I have a real clear reason for feeling the way I do, and I start arguing with someone about it, I'm now in fight or flight, and my brain will over-process justifying my anger. If I were thinking really rationally and stepping back, I actually might be able to just say, you know what? I don't even need to argue about this at all. Let's just solve it. Let's just solve the problem. But what's fascinating is we won't just solve the problem. We'll just go right into this justifying and rationalizing of the problem and why we can be angry about it. And what that's actually doing is taking up time. It's taking up an enormous amount of time. And it's taking up what I refer to as brain space, like so much brain space. I just want to welcome Lonnie here. Lonnie, at the end of the half hour, will go live for questions and answers, but I'm also live on Facebook right now. So I'm going to coach you right up until 9:30, and then we'll open up the line. So angry, annoyed, anxious, afraid, ashamed, argumentative. So over these next few weeks, if you can start to notice anything that causes you to feel those emotions, just the first step is really just awareness, just noticing it. I joke a lot, but when we had all our kids home and it was a very busy household, for me, it was dirty socks in the house. Like dirty socks showing up somewhere where they shouldn't be was such an annoyance to me that it would actually trigger my stress response. So the third thing I want to do here with you is share a little bit about the stress response and what happens when you feel these emotions and how it's affecting specifically your ability to focus and what it's doing for memory. So from a resting heart rate, if you start to feel one of these emotions, your heart rate is probably going to start to jack up into a higher heart rate, and two things are going to happen in your brain. Your amygdala, deep inside your brain, people call it the monkey brain, the croc brain. It's like that reptilian brain, if you will. It's your fight or flight brain, is how I'll refer to it, your fight or flight brain. There's going to be an instant connection through a nerve to the center of your adrenal glands, these little tiny glands near your kidneys. The inner part of that is going to release a flood of hormones. They're called catecholamines. I call them a cocktail. It's a little cocktail of adrenaline, noradrenaline, and dopamine. We think of dopamine up here in the brain, but dopamine also created in the adrenal glands. Now, this little cocktail is going to go right into your bloodstream to tell your entire body processes to do various things for one purpose, to protect you from a physical attack. So every bit of your body is going to change in order for you to protect yourself, including your brain. And we're going to focus on the brain for this particular session. So your outer brain, your cortex and your hippocampus back here is how we do rational thought. This is your executive function. There's two areas in the brain for willpower. Your hippocampus is processing, it's storing and processing memory. So all of that is going to somewhat shut down when we go into fight or flight. That's why if you go to an event and you meet someone and 5 seconds later you can't remember their name, that's why. Because everyone on this call is brilliant. Janet is a retired teacher, amazing woman. I coached her privately. It's so good to see her on here. Like, we have amazing brains. These brains can do so much. So why can't we remember Jack, who we just met at the party? It's a single syllable, Jack. But we'll go, oh, it starts with J. What is it? What is it? So what's happened is this hippocampus back here is somewhat shut down. It can't lodge the memory of Jack introducing himself to us. Does that make sense? So it's not that we have a quote unquote memory issue. We have a memory issue in a blip of time because of the release of these hormones. Thinking of, my mother was a teacher, Janet was a teacher. I raised 3 boys. They're working on their math facts. They're in 3rd grade. They do them perfectly at home. And then they go to school to be tested and they can't remember. They knew them perfectly, but then they can't remember. That's another example of, and some children, you'll call it test anxiety. It's performance anxiety, test anxiety, but it could simply have been this. My kids wake up and I go, hurry up, we're going to be late. And the moment I say that, they trigger the stress response. And now the hippocampus isn't working so well. So focus, you need this whole cortex to allow you to focus well on things. When we're in fight or flight, all we want to be able to do is recognize threats. So our brain is hyper vigilant to notice what might be threatening to us. I had one client who would walk down her hall, she's a corporate executive, and if she saw her boss coming the other way, would trigger the stress response. No interaction, just seeing them triggered the stress response. So it could be the smallest of things that do this to us, but then we go to work on an issue or a problem and we're not fully functioning. And then we get to the end of our day and we're exhausted. So most of the exhaustion we're feeling is not because we worked on the farm all day and did something in construction or worked with our bodies. It's because we are emotionally, our brain isn't tired. We're tired because we keep releasing these hormones that are just really causing a lot of havoc in here. So that's kind of the negative news about it. Let's think about the positive though. Like if we don't trigger those hormones, what's happening in the brain? Like what is possible in the brain? It's really pretty amazing what I see happen for so many people. Students that I work with, they go from having, I had one student getting straight C's and D's, go to straight A's and become a straight A honors student all through high school. He was a CD student when he was 12. He had ADHD. He thought he was stupid. He wasn't stupid at all. He was brilliant. But he had test anxiety. So every time he went to take the test, he couldn't prove what he actually knew. And that's how we are as adults too. Like we'll go through, things will happen to us and things, we have experiences and it kind of shuts us down. And we go into a pattern that's not helpful. So when you can start to notice feeling angry, annoyed, anxious, afraid, ashamed, or argumentative, just start with those. There's plenty of other emotions we could feel. Maybe you're not noticing so much what's happening in your head, but maybe you can notice it in your body. So ask yourself this question, where do I hold tension? Some people grind their teeth at night and they hold a lot of tension in their jaw. I've seen people talk with me and then once they start talking about something that's disturbing them, their jaw gets really tight. And I'll ask them, do you sometimes get migraines or headaches? And they're like, yeah. So it's like all the tension is up in here or upper shoulders, like the shoulders go up. So it's like, where are we holding the tension? It could be in this upper part. For some people, the tension is in their chest, like it like tightens. It almost feels like you can't breathe. So there's a lot of tension. You can feel your heart racing. For some people, it's their belly, their stomach hurts. Like they have nausea. I know there's a lot of people that will wake up and they have to go to work or school. It's like, oh, my stomach doesn't feel good. I can't have breakfast. I can't eat. So many people say, I can't eat in the morning. And they think it's because they're patterned to not want to eat in the morning. But actually, it's probably because they triggered the stress response and their stomach doesn't want food. So it's like, where are we holding these tensions? So notice your A emotions, but then also notice your body tension. Some people, it's their hands tighten up. Some people, it's their feet. So if you can notice these tensions, to me, that's a clue. Oh, by the way, if you like click pens or bite pens or bite your cuticles or bite your fingernails, like that's a tense thing. So that's a clue. I always tell people, don't think of it as a negative thing so much, but like that's a clue. Then stop and ask yourself, oh, what's working on me? That could help you interrupt the stress response. Now, the whole key to pressure-free living is noticing these tensions, either mentally or physically, and knowing that you have about 10 seconds from the moment you start noticing the tension moving in to prevent the release of that flood of hormones. Now, I mentioned that there's two things happening in the brain when we go into fight or flight. The first was that immediate cocktail. Once that cocktail's gone out, it's going to take up to 9 hours for males and up to 24 hours for females for all the cells to dissipate these hormones and you get back to normal. And that's because a little later after the first flood, there's going to be a second flood of hormones. That second flood is coming from the outer skin, and it's taken a while for the brain to tell the outer skin of the cortex to make a bunch of glucocorticoids. Now, people are talking about cortisol a lot these days. Cortisol is a miracle drug. Some people get cortisone shots in their knees so their knees can function. Cortisone is a wonderful drug, but people are kind of trying to cancel cortisone these days. And here's the deal. If you trigger the catecholamine flood, that first cocktail, you need these other hormones to go out to fix your brain cells and your extremities where you've pulled fat and glucose to fight or run away. So glucocorticoids, cortisol, has a very great purpose. However, it does a lot of damage as well. And two of the negative things are that it can make you feel anxious for no reason and cause insomnia. So that's why it's being talked about a lot. However, if you need that flood to go out to help fix these brain cells. So it's like a catch-22. And we stay in these patterns so long that they're all interwoven over each other because so many times a day we can feel any of those emotions. So the key is starting to notice in that 10-second window how to interrupt and not release that first flood of hormones. When we can do that, then the second flood doesn't go out. And then your body remains much more in homeostasis, where the cells are able to do everything they need to do, no matter what the body process is. So when we go back to the brain, if we can keep the cells of the brain in homeostasis, we're going to be able to function better cognitively. We're going to be able to use that hippocampus, store information, and retrieve information so much better. We're going to be able to see better and hear better. And that's something that's kind of interesting. I'm sure you've talked to somebody before where it's like their eyes are glazed over and it's like they're not even paying attention to you, right? And then later you said, hey, do you remember when I told you to take out the garbage? You're like, no, I don't remember that. Well, that's probably because they had triggered the stress response. And when you talk to them, they didn't even lodge the memory of you telling them to take out the garbage, okay? And yet we'll blame them for not listening to us. So a lot of the miscommunication we have, both in the workplace and at home, happens because people are not present. They're not focused in the moment and present, and they can't take in the information, let alone be able to retrieve it and actually do something about it. So I love to tell people, like, so much of our miscommunication goes away when we can not release these hormones. It's not their fault they didn't hear you. They don't know about the stress response. Some of my clients will say, why didn't they teach us this in middle school? Well, we all should have learned this when we were probably in kindergarten, to tell you the truth. It would have saved a whole lot of havoc. So it's really fun when you can start to figure out, oh, wow, this makes me feel a little annoyed. I'm not going to release those hormones and I'm going to be fine. So how do we break the pattern? The last thing I want to share tonight are some specific tools very specific when I think about brain focus and memory. And so the first most impactful tool you can do to help your brain stay online is to simply smile. Sounds like it's simple, but the corners of the mouth going up release neuropeptides, little proteins in your brain that allow the cortex and the hippocampus to keep functioning with all the other neurotransmitters that are going to go. A couple of those are dopamine and serotonin. People think of those as the feel-good drugs, but they're so much more impactful than just that. They're allowing this whole thing to work for you. So simply smiling, corners of the mouth going up, even if it's a bit of a smirk, it can be sarcastic, it can be a little smirk, but if you can get that smile going up a little bit, because you've said for the millionth time to take care of the garbage or whatever it is, like just keep your brain online, then now you're going to be able to make decisions better. You'll have more willpower, and you're going to have much more better memory storage and retrieval. Not to mention all the other things our brain is doing for us constantly. I mean, our brains are quite miraculous when you think about it. So a smile is the #1 tool for brain health. And the second one I would give you tonight would be to ask yourself an empowering question. So in that 10-second window, if you can pause for a moment and ask yourself a question that powers you toward solution instead of going into the rationalizing and justifying of why you feel angry or annoyed or whatever that emotion is. Like, I should feel anxious here because this is happening to me. Pause and ask yourself the question, starting with the words, how can I or how might I? By the way, someone who was just at my New Hampshire retreat gave me that idea of using the word might, which I absolutely love. So if you're a team, a couple, a family, two or more, how can we or how might we? And get very specific about the thing you wish to solve. So it could be, and I love using, and our brain loves it too. Our brain loves descriptive words. So adverbs and adjectives are wonderful. So how can I solve this easily? As a violinist, I might ask, how can I play this beautifully? So how can I have more focus in my day to day? Like, what is it that you desire and what is it that you want? And then the third tool, I'm going to give 3 tools every night this week. So the third tool I want to give is a framework using a large body motion. So a gross motor motion is one of the only ways an adult brain can actually instantly open neural pathways. If we can open new neural pathways, we can change up a habit so much quicker than if we just talk about it or think about it. So I have a little frame, I call it swim, where you put your hands together, and I'm just going to use this as an example. So I'm not very artistic, something I might say about myself. Like, I'm having an issue, I have to be a little artistic. I'm like, but I'm not very artistic. I've instantly tightened myself up. So I put my hands together and I would say, okay, I'm not very, so in the past, I haven't been very artistic. I'm now open to the possibility. So you open your hands, that's the swim motion. We're switching our mindset, our inner mindset, swim, switching inner mindset. That in the future, I will become a better artist, or I will have more artistic ability. So what is it you want to switch out? Let's say you want more focus. So in the past, I've been diagnosed ADHD and I have a problem with focus. I'm now open to the possibility that I can develop more presence and focus. So if you can do this motion, the moment you feel the tension, just take a swim. Just take a swim. And if you can do that right in that 10-second window, you can interrupt the release of those hormones. If you interrupt the release of those hormones, every single one of your body processes, including your brain processing, is going to work so much more better for you. So it's kind of like you're becoming a private eye about yourself, noticing what makes you feel these emotions, noticing what causes the tension. It could be the smallest of things. For some people, it's the sounds their phone makes. They just hear the phone ringing, even like the old landlines that everyone would go crazy in the house because the phone's ringing. So it's like sounds, smells, like what are all these little things that could possibly cause you to trigger the stress response? So that's my expertise, is the fight or flight stress response. I go very deeply on it when I'm working with my private clients, and I help them identify their patterns so they can really figure out what's going on. So if you're watching this and you want to go a little deeper with me, we're going to do 3 more nights of deep dives on specific subjects here. And you can also go to my website. It's my name. So you see it down in the corner of here, ELLE Ingalls. So elleingles.com. And you're always welcome to book a consultation with me. It's totally free. And we can talk more about what's really happening for you and how the stress response is affecting you and how to start to relieve that for you. So I'm going to close out our Facebook Live. And for the people who are on here live in Zoom, we're going to do a little question and answer. And if you want to join us, anyone on Facebook in future nights, just there's some links on my Facebook page. Just go on and click in there. And then we'll be going live on Facebook, but also within Zoom on the next couple of nights. So have a great pressure-free night. And I'm going to close out of Facebook if I can figure out how I do that. Let's see.